My parents skipped my wedding to join my sister's yacht proposal. 3 years later, they saw my face on a highway billboard and begged to meet. The morning of my wedding dawned with a sky so flawlessly blue that it appeared to be created specifically for us. Sunlight shone through the windows of our small venue, a refurbished old barn in Lancaster County that Ethan Monroe and I had fell in love with right away. I stood alone in the bridal room, my wedding gown hanging from a wooden beam. The lace detail captured the light in ways that made me stop and enjoy it. Despite the hollowness in my chest, my phone remained quiet on the vanity. No missed calls or new messages. I'd known for 4 weeks that my parents and sister wouldn't be attending. Mom had contacted me as I was finalizing the meal with our caterer. Her voice had that particular tone, which she utilized when delivering news that she considered inconvenient rather than catastrophic. "Rachel, honey, I don't think we can make it to your wedding." The caterer had stared at me as I tightened my grasp on the phone. "What do you mean you can't make it? It's in 4 weeks. Lily's boyfriend plans to propose next month. They're heading to Miami for the weekend, and we offered to assist with some of the arrangements. You promised to help with arrangements for a proposal that hasn't even happened yet, instead of attending your own daughter's wedding." The words had tasted terrible as they left my mouth. Do not be theatrical. Ryan's family controls the financial business, and they are quite fussy about traditions. His parents are hiring a yacht for the proposal weekend and have encouraged us to participate. It would be impolite to decline. The caterer softly excused herself from the table. I scarcely noticed. "So, you're skipping my wedding, my actual wedding, for a proposal that may not even materialize. For Lily's boyfriend's parents, whom you've only seen twice." "3 times, my mom corrected. "And don't act silly. Of course, he will propose. He had already showed us the ring. It's 5 carats, Rachel. 5. Besides, your wedding is quite basic. Ethan's parents are already footing the majority of the costs, right? Simple." She spoke it as if it were embarrassing. Ethan and I had planned everything ourselves, paid for much of it, and decided what was important to us. Yes, his parents had helped. They'd insisted on covering the venue, but they'd done it out of genuine enthusiasm for our selections, not the thinly veiled displeasure my family couldn't hide. Ethan's parents are supportive of our decisions. They are not purchasing our wedding. My mother had sighed. "I don't see why you are so unhappy." "This is not surprising, Rachel. You have always done things your way, despite our recommendations. If you dated Ryan when he expressed interest in you before Lily, you could have gotten the boat proposal." The memory of that talk seared as I stood alone in the bridal suite. Margaret, Ethan's mother, tapped lightly before entering, her smile warm as she brought in a tray of fresh pastries and coffee. "The makeup artist will be here in 20 minutes. I thought you might like breakfast." She hesitated, observing my look. "Rachel, honey, what is wrong?" "Nothing," I said with a forced smile. "Just wedding day jitters." Margaret set the package down and grasped my hands in hers. "What about your parents?" I nodded, unable to speak with the knot in my throat. "I'm really sorry," she replied, squeezing my hands. "But I want you to know how happy Thomas and I are to have you join our family. We couldn't have imagined a finer mate for Ethan." The ceremony was magnificent in its intimacy, with 60 attendees rather than the intended 64. Ethan's eyes welled up with tears as I walked down the aisle on his father's arm. When Thomas realized that my father would not be attending, he insisted on accompanying me. Hannah and Sophie, my college friends, served as my bridesmaids, while Marcus, Ethan's brother, was best man. We exchanged vows under a wooden arch decorated with wildflowers and fairy lights. The reception included local farm-to-table cuisine, craft beer from Ethan's favorite brewery, and a playlist that we spent weeks creating. We danced under strings of market lights with others who had decided to join us in celebrating. Even with the vacant chairs at the head table, everything was excellent. The honeymoon in Maine had been an ideal vacation. Ethan and I spent a week in a seaside cabin near Bar Harbor, trekking around Acadia National Park by day and falling asleep to the sound of waves at night. We fully withdrew from our phones, social media, and family drama. For 7 days, it was just us, laying the groundwork for our marriage free of external pressures and expectations. Mary Ann, the owner of the cottage, was a silver-haired artist who resided there all year. She'd taken a liking to us right away, sharing local secrets that tourists rarely knew about. A hidden cove with tide pools teeming with starfish, a family-owned bakery that made wild blueberry pies from berries picked that morning, and a secluded cliff path with views that stretched to Canada on clear days. "You two have something special," she told us one evening when we drank a bottle of wine on her porch. The sunset illuminated the sky in vivid oranges and pinks, which reflected off the calm water of the bay. I've been watching couples pass through here for 30 years. I know which ones will last. What is our secret? Ethan inquired, his fingers interlocked with mine. Marianne grinned as the lines around her eyes deepened. You look at each other as equals. Some couples have one person continually gazing up and the other looking down. Never worked. She held up her glass and waved toward us. You two though. Eye to eye. Her remarks resonated with me during our visit. Eye to eye, equal. It was everything. My parents' marriage was not everything. My bond with my family has never existed. Marianne pushed a tiny box into my hands on our last morning in Maine. Wedding gift, she explained. Open it when you need reminding. I placed the item into my bag, meaning to unwrap it when we arrived home. 3 days after returning from our honeymoon, I received an SMS from my sister. There were no congrats, no queries about the wedding or honeymoon, just a snapshot of a huge diamond ring on her finger and the words, "He proposed." Mom and Dad hired a yacht with Ryan's family for the entire weekend. We're thinking about a June wedding at the Hamilton estate. Save the date. The anguish that went through me was shockingly tangible, causing a constriction in my chest and difficulty breathing. Despite skipping my wedding to prepare for this particular occasion, they couldn't even acknowledge what they'd done. No apologies, no wish you could have been there, just celebration, and the assumption that I would play my part in Lily's beautiful life narrative. I gazed at my phone screen for a few minutes before placing it face down on the kitchen counter of our new apartment. Ethan found me later, still standing in the same location. Lily got engaged, I announced frankly. He threw his arms around me from behind and rested his chin on my shoulder. Are you all right? They rented a yacht, Ethan. My parents, who were unable to attend their own daughter's wedding, leased a boat for my sister's engagement. I'm so sorry, Rach. I twisted in his arms, suddenly recalling Marianne's box. Wait here. I pulled the little gift from my bag, which was still partially unpacked from our trip. Unwrapping it carefully, I discovered a hand-painted stone within. On one side, there was an exquisite compass rose. On the other hand, phrases are painted in exquisite script. The direction of your life is always your choice. A letter slipped behind the stone stated, the most meaningful journeys frequently begin with walking away. Trust your compass. I returned to the kitchen, clutching the stone. Ethan stood where I had left him, concerned expression on his face. No, I said, straightening my shoulders. I'm done apologizing. I'm done hoping they'll change. As I spoke, memories poured back. Years of differing treatment between me and my sister were crystal obvious. When Lily turned 17, my parents presented her with a new automobile. When I turned 17 a year ago, I was given driving lessons and told I needed to save for my own car. For my high school graduation, they threw a little supper at their home. They leased a space and invited 55 people to Lily's graduation the next year. At every point the pattern was consistent. What Lily received for free, I had to earn or go without. They've shown me who they are my entire life, I said, my voice more stable than I expected. I just refuse to believe it. Ethan gripped my hands, his eyes steadfast. Whatever you decide, I am with you. But make sure you're doing it for the proper reasons. Self-respect, not anger. His knowledge touched me greatly. This was not about penalizing them. It was about preserving myself. About making room for a life in which I wasn't always trying for unattainable acceptance. That evening, I wrote a quick email to my parents. I've spent years hoping to get your approval and attention. I've excused your actions and blamed myself for not being good enough. I can't do it anymore. I need room to create a life in which I am valued. Please do not contact me for a time. I'll reach out when I'm ready. Rachel, I sent Lily a similar note, congratulating her on her engagement but explaining that I would not be attending her wedding. Then I banned their numbers, deleted them off my social media, and focused on the future I was creating with Ethan. The early days of separation were more difficult than I had imagined. Habits acquired over decades do not go suddenly. I found myself reaching for my phone to communicate good news before realizing there was no purpose. Unexpected surges of sadness would wash over me at unexpected times, not for what I'd lost, but for something that never existed in the first place. Unconditional familial support. Ethan recommended treatment. Rach, this is a significant life shift. Having someone impartial to talk to might help. I first resisted. My family had always viewed therapy as paying strangers to hear your issues. However, the voice in my brain was just what I needed to leave. Dr. Lauren Hayes, A family systems specialist with experience in adult children navigating complex family relationships, was recommended to me by our insurance provider. What you're describing is a common pattern, she explained during our third session. Golden child versus scapegoat dynamics. It's not about who you are, but the roles you've been allocated. I don't feel like a scapegoat, I protested. They never blamed me for anything. The scapegoat isn't always blamed, she added. Sometimes they're just the one who's expected to accommodate, to understand, to make do with less. The one whose needs are secondary. Her remarks shed light on a lifetime of experiences, how I'd learnt to ignore my own demands, to cherish Lily's times in the spotlight while minimizing my own failures. How I had accepted the notion that desiring more was selfish, and that I should be content with whatever attention came my way. Your decision to step back does not mean you are abandoning them, Dr. Hayes explained. It's refusing to engage in a dynamic that causes you harm. That is healthy. Through weekly sessions, I began to unravel the intricate web of family conditioning. Some days brought up righteous, purifying wrath, which burnt away years of self-doubt. Other days brought such deep despair that it felt bottomless. However, the emotional storms became less frequent and severe, leaving way for something new. Possibility. Ethan and I developed routines that supported our relationship. Sunday morning walks in local state parks, cooking ambitious meals together on Wednesday nights, and a monthly adventure day where we'd travel somewhere new within a 3-hour radius. We created customs that were entirely ours, free of familial expectations. His parents, Margaret and Thomas, asked us to supper every other Friday. Unlike my family's formal gatherings, when discussions were staged and judgments were veiled as care, these dinners were casual, with real attention and easy laughing. Margaret never compared Ethan to his brother Marcus, never implying that one was more valued than the other. Thomas talked about both of his boys with equal pride. You seem different here, Ethan said as we drove home from one such evening. Be more easygoing. I'm not bracing for judgment, I said loudly. With my family, I always felt like I was auditioning for approval. Lily sent me an email 4 months into our family separation. It had gotten over my blocks by coming from her work address. Rachel, I don't comprehend what's going on. Mom and Dad will not discuss why you are not speaking to them. They only say you need room. My wedding is in 4 months and my maid of honor position is vacant. You are my sister. Whatever they did, please do not penalize me for it. Lils. The email revealed so much in its silence. She thought our parents were at blame without knowing the specifics, indicating a trend she recognized. Nonetheless, she wanted me to play my assigned position in her life, regardless of my sentiments. I wrote and erased 5 different replies before deciding on honesty. Lils, I am not punishing you. I'm making room to recover from patterns that have harmed me for years. The different treatment we've received isn't your fault, but I can't pretend it doesn't exist anymore. I hope your wedding is all you imagined. I hope Ryan makes you happy. But I will not be going. I need this limit right now. Perhaps one day we will be able to create a relationship as equals, rather than as golden child and shadow sister. Rachel. She didn't respond. I later learnt from mutual contacts that she had requested her college roommate to serve as maid of honor. Their wedding images appeared in a regional lifestyle magazine, with my parents beaming in the front row and the banquet at the Hamilton estate being as opulent as imagined. I felt a tingle of something as I scrolled through the web galleries. But it was not remorse. It was realization of how divergent our paths had become. Meanwhile, my own route took unforeseen turns. 4 months later, the startup incubation program approved my application. While working on my MBA, I created a company concept for customizable subscription wellness boxes that integrated Eastern and Western approaches to health. The notion began as a graduate school passion project to deal with the burden of studies and family disappointment. Years ago, during my undergraduate studies in biochemistry and commerce, I had an idea. My roommate Hannah had chronic fatigue syndrome, so I saw firsthand the limitations of traditional treatment. Doctors administered drug after medication, each relieving isolated symptoms but without addressing the underlying imbalance. Hannah, frustrated with their approach, began looking into alternative therapies such as acupuncture, adaptogenic medicines, and nutritional therapy. Western medicine sees the body as separate systems, she told me one night as we sat cross-legged on her dorm room floor, going through her increasing supplement collection. Eastern medicine sees everything as connected. I was originally suspicious. My scientific classes focused on empirical data, controlled investigations, and medicinal remedies. However, observing Hannah progressively regain her vitality through this integrated method piqued my interest in healing practices that my education had previously ignored. My grandma, May, had planted the seeds much earlier. She was born in Fagan Province and immigrated to America in her 20s, where she kept her traditional rituals while also adopting features of Western culture. As a youngster, I spent summers with her, enthralled by her medical cabinet, which had prescription bottles as well as fascinating jars of dried herbs, roots and mushrooms. Balance, she'd say in her affected English, showing me how to make ginger tea for my upset stomach rather than going for Pepto-Bismol. The body understands how to cure itself. We simply remind it. My parents endured her old-fashioned medicines with hardly veiled disgust. "Mom, she needs real medicine," my father would urge whenever I became unwell during visits. My grandma would grin, stand aside for pharmaceutical solutions, and then hand me her teas and tonics while winking conspiratorially. After she died when I was 15, I acquired her remedy diary, which had handwritten notes in a combination of Mandarin and English chronicling generations of healing expertise. I kept it secret because I knew my parents would dismiss it as superstitious rubbish. But, throughout college and beyond, I found myself returning to those pages, particularly during times of stress or sickness. My Zenita Wellness Company concept arose from a convergence of elements, with my biochemistry background giving scientific insight, my grandmother's traditional wisdom offering alternative techniques, and my business degree providing the foundation to properly combine them. The approach included tailored supplement regimens, adaptogenic herbs, targeted instructional components, and optional telemedicine nutrition delivery methods, consultations. Each subscription box would be created based on a thorough intake evaluation that addressed individual health objectives and concerns using a combination of evidence-based remedies from many healing traditions. My MBA teachers were thrilled about the notion, but my family disregarded it as just another of my unrealistic ideas. Dad had pushed me into corporate finance, where he had contacts. Mom proposed pharmaceutical sales, claiming it was near enough to my interests, but with real money. The wellness space is overcrowded, my father asserted during a heated dinner conversation. And these diverse methods are simply trends. In 5 years they will move on to the next trend. "It's not a trend, Dad," I responded. "It represents a fundamental change in how people see health." Integrative medicine programs are being launched at major hospitals. Insurance companies are beginning to pay alternative therapies. "Rachel always needs to be different," my mother had moaned to Lily, as if we weren't sharing a table. "Remember when she insisted on studying biochemistry instead of communications, as we suggested?" Lily, a communications major at the time, grinned. "Not everyone can handle the hard sciences, Mom." The discourse had degenerated from there, with my evidence-based arguments disregarded as stubbornness and my enthusiasm misinterpreted as disobedience. I'd left that meal with a familiar heaviness, the weight of being misunderstood by those closest to me. Ethan believed in me entirely. He assisted me with the company strategy, sat up late talking marketing techniques, and urged me to apply to the incubator program. His encouragement never wavered, even after I was turned down by the first 2 programs I applied to. "Those rejections aren't about your concept," he said after the second dismal email. "They are about fit and timing. The correct application will identify what you are creating." He had been correct. The third submission, to a program particularly dedicated to health innovation, had touched the perfect chord. The acceptance email arrived on a Tuesday morning when I was working at my consulting job, a practical employment I'd accepted after college to save money. I phoned Ethan immediately. "They've accepted us. $20,000 in startup money, plus 8 months of coaching." "I knew they would," he said, his voice assured and pleasant. "This is just the beginning, Rach. The program demanded a full-time commitment, so I would have to resign my consulting employment." The concept scared me. My parents' voices rang in my mind. Irresponsible. Risky. Bullish. For a brief moment, I considered reaching for my phone to seek their advice, a reaction resulting from decades of indoctrination. Instead, I phoned Dr. Hayes to schedule an emergency session. "What is keeping you back?" she inquired after I had described my situation. "Financial worries, practical reasons, or the dread of proving them correct if you fail?" Her question emphasized the internal struggle. "The last one," I confessed. "If this doesn't work, they'll see it as confirmation that they were right about me all along." "What if it does work?" she challenged. "Will they see that as validation that they were wrong?" I laughed without humor. "Perhaps not. They'll either claim they've always backed me, or try to minimize it." "So their opinion cannot be the deciding factor," she stated. "It's a no-win scenario if that's your metric for success." She was correct. I hadn't had direct touch with my family in months, but I was still instinctively seeking their approval and fearing their judgment. True independence means making judgments based on my own beliefs and assessments, rather than reacting to their expectations. I tendered notice at my consulting business the next day. My supervisor, Angela, showed real disappointment at losing me, but offered to link me with possible investors. Rachel, your notion has legs. With the correct support, you may truly revolutionize the wellness sector. 3 days later, I signed the incubation program documents. That evening, Ethan surprised me with a celebratory supper on our apartment balcony, complete with string lights, champagne, and takeaway from our favorite Ethiopian restaurant. To Zanita Wellness, he said, his eyes mirroring the glittering lights. And to my brilliant, brave wife who's about to change how people think about health. As we clinked glasses, I felt a deep feeling of connection to myself, my values, and my vision. For the first time in my life, I was not torn between who I was and who others expected me to be. The relief was amazing. The following 8 months were a flurry of 16-hour workdays, prototype development, market research, and non-stop meetings. Ethan took on extra photography projects to augment our income while I established the basis for Zanita Wellness. The name combines Zen with the final 3 letters of my grandmother's name, May. By the end of the incubation program, we had raised an additional $300,000 in angel funding, completed our supply chain, and released a beta version of our platform with 250 test clients. The reaction was highly good. After the second month, our client retention rate had reached 90%, which was nearly double the industry average. 20 months after our inception, we raised $2.5 million in Series A investment. By then, our subscription base had surpassed 60,000 users. 7 months later, after being highlighted in Women's Health, Forbes 30 Under 30, and other major morning shows, our subscriber base grew to 85,000. As we approached our 4-year anniversary, Zanita was expanding faster than we had planned. Ethan came up with the idea for the billboard ad. We should celebrate hitting 120,000 subscribers with something bold, he proposed during a rare weekend excursion to the Finger Lakes. We've been so consumed with the business that we've barely taken time to process our success. Billboards are expensive, I argued, but the concept piqued my interest. An old-school move for a digital-first company. Sometimes old school cuts through the noise, Ethan explained, refilling our wine cups. Also, your narrative is compelling. A female entrepreneur, an original concept, and rapid development. In important marketplaces, your face should stand 40 feet tall. I chuckled, but promised to talk about it with our marketing staff. They quickly fell in love with the notion. We designed a set of 5 billboards in important areas around the Northeast, with a basic design, my image with our motto, Wellness Reimagined, and the Zanita logo and website. The Philadelphia billboard was the first to go up, carefully placed on I-90 so that commuters, particularly those commuting between my hometown and the suburbs where my parents still resided, would not miss it. I didn't intend it as a statement to my family. They were no longer on my radar. In the 3 years after we lost communication, I'd moved on from worrying if they ever thought of me. The hollow aching had gradually become filled with purpose, accomplishment, and true connection. Ethan and I had created a household full of laughter and mutual respect. We discovered our people, friends who showed up, celebrated our wins, and helped us overcome disappointments. Angela from my previous consultancy position had become a close friend and informal advisor. Hannah and Sophie stayed consistent throughout my life. Ethan's parents treated me as a daughter, not an afterthought. The call came on a Wednesday afternoon, while I was discussing quarterly predictions with our CFO, Claire. My assistant, Brooke, knocked on my office door with an especially agitated countenance. I apologize for interrupting, but there's a woman on line 1 who insists on speaking with you. She says she is your mother. My hand froze on the worksheet I'd been annotating. Claire glanced between Brooke and me, perceiving a sudden shift in energy. Should I tell her you are unavailable? Brooke inquired, already reaching for the door. I took a big breath. No, I will accept it. Claire, can we do this in an hour? After they departed, I gazed at my desk phone's flashing light for almost a minute before picking up the receiver. This is Rachel Monroe. After our wedding, I took Ethan's surname, cutting off my final official tie to my family of origin. Rachel, it's Mom. Her voice sounded precisely the same, yet strangely foreign after 3 years of stillness. I know. I maintained a neutral, professional tone, as if she were just another business contact. We noticed the billboard on our way to Lily's house yesterday. Your father almost drove off the road. She let out a short, hesitant laugh that faded swiftly in the quiet. Is that why you've called? To discuss my company's marketing strategy? Oh, of course not. We're phoning because... Her voice cracked. Rachel, why didn't you tell us? What about your own family? We had to figure out from a billboard that you're a wealthy entrepreneur now. The boldness of her inquiry took my breath away for a second. 3 years of quiet, followed by a lifetime of conditional love. What did she expect? Was a press release delivered to their home? Despite their apparent lack of interest, do they provide regular updates on my achievements? I did tell you, I eventually said. For years, I've told you about my hobbies, aspirations, and vision. You were not interested. That is not fair. We always wanted the best for you. No, you wanted what was simplest to comprehend and boast about. Lily's fiancé's family's affluence is easy to grasp. My enthusiasm for integrative wellness is too intricate and hazardous. Rachel, please. We've missed you dearly. You departed from our lives with no explanation. For 3 years, there have been no calls or visits. Then you find yourself on a huge billboard. Do you understand how that feels as a mother? I closed my eyes and imagined the scene. Their surprise at seeing my face above the highway. The hurried explanation to whoever they were with, and the frenzied Googling of my firm name once they arrived at Lily's house. Had they been so amazed, bewildered, or ashamed that they had no idea about my success? How did you feel about skipping my wedding for Lily's proposal weekend? I asked gently. What was it like to charter a boat for her engagement but not attend my wedding? The line was silent for a few seconds. We made a mistake, she eventually conceded. We should have been there. Yes, you should have. The words came out more calmly than I intended. Mom, that wasn't a one-time error. It was the conclusion of a lifelong practice of being second choice. That is not true. We adore both of our girls equally. Please don't lie to me. Not now. She was silent again. Your father and I want to make amends, she replied finally. We want to be a part of your life again. Can we meet someplace and discuss face to face? Part of me wanted to deny, to preserve the quiet I'd established. But another part, the one that had finally grown confident in her own value, was prepared to confront them on new terms. I have a lunch opening next Thursday, I replied. There is a cafe near my office called Eastwood. 1:30. We'll be there, she pledged, her voice filled with optimism. Should we bring Lily? She's also been inquiring about you. No, I said firmly. Just you and Dad for now. After hanging up, I sat still, taking in the talk. Ethan would be concerned when I informed him, protective of me and fearful of the suffering my family may cause, but he would back any decision I chose. That assurance seemed like a protection against whatever may come next. Eastwood Cafe was located on the ground level of a restored manufacturing building, 4 blocks from Zenita's headquarters. Floor-to-ceiling windows let in plenty of natural light, while exposed brick walls and wooden beams protected the space's industrial past. I had purposefully picked neutral area that was near enough to my office for me to feel safe on my own soil. I arrived 20 minutes early and chose a corner table that provided solitude without isolation. Brooke had cleared my calendar for the afternoon, assuming without explanation that I may require time later. My parents entered at precisely 1:30 p.m., scouring the cafe until they saw me. They appeared older than I recalled, with Dad's hair grayer and Mom's face more lined. They approached me with similar faces of apprehension, as if approaching a stranger who resembled someone they previously knew. Dad murmured, "Rachel," as they approached the table. He bent down hesitantly, uncertain whether to hug me. I stood and extended my hand instead. He shook it, amazement on his face. Mom made no such pretense, drawing me into an embrace that I neither reciprocated nor rejected. "You look wonderful," she added, taking a step back to assess me. "Success suits you." We ordered lunch, a ritual that gave structure to an otherwise chaotic interaction. Small chat got us through the wait for our food. Benign comments about the weather, the cafe's industrial decor, and the quality of the coffee. Finally, as we finished eating, Dad cleared his throat. "Your mother and I owe you an apology," the man said. "We should have attended your wedding. There is no justification for missing it, and I am profoundly embarrassed of our decision." His candor astonished me. Dad had seldom confessed wrongdoing during my youth. "We've done a lot of thinking over these past 3 years," my mother said, "about the type of parents we were to you versus Lily. We didn't see it then, but looking back," she twisted the napkin between her fingers, "we preferred her. We made justifications for treating you differently, but that's how it was." "Why?" The inquiry vanished before I could decide if I wanted to hear their response. They exchanged looks, a form of wordless communication I'd seen many times as a child, always feeling excluded from their inner language. Lily was easier, Dad acknowledged. She wanted what we understood: status, security, traditional success. You've always pushed the boundaries, Mom continued. I questioned everything. You wanted to build your own way. That terrified us. So you just didn't, I remarked quietly. No, we didn't, Dad confirmed. And we missed out on knowing an extraordinary daughter because of it. The approval I had been seeking for so long came with a startling emptiness. I had already established my life without their consent. Receiving it now was like getting a map after finishing a voyage. Tell me about your company, Mom replied with real interest in her voice. The billboard advertised Wellness Reimagined. So, what exactly does that mean? I spent the next 30 minutes explaining Zenita's objective, our development trajectory, and my vision for the future. They listened with an attentiveness I had never seen from them before, asking meaningful questions that showed they had researched my sector before to our encounter. We're so proud of you, Dad added after I finished. What you've built is remarkable. Thank you, I said, the words strange on my tongue, accepting their pride after years of seeking it. We'd like to be a part of your life again, Rachel, Mom replied, reaching across the table but not touching my hand. I examined their expressions: hope, remorse, and an unaccustomed humility. I'm not the same person you knew, I informed them. I won't shrink myself to fit your expectations anymore. We don't want you to, Dad said. We want to know who you really are. I can't promise anything, I explained gently. But I am prepared to try a limited reunion. Holidays are still off the menu. There have been no family reunions with Lily yet. Maybe coffee once a month and see how it works. Relief poured across their cheeks. They had evidently expected absolute rejection. We'll take whatever you're willing to give, Mom murmured quietly. As we were about to go, Dad paused. There is something more. We watched the interviews you gave about your grandmother's impact on your company concept, May's Cures, her notebooks. I nodded, curious where he was headed with this. After you stopped communicating, we cleared up the attic. We discovered a box of her belongings that your grandpa sent after her death. We were unable to read several more journals, some of which were written in Chinese, old photos and letters. We thought you might want them. My throat clenched. You've kept her notebooks all these time? We didn't know they existed until recently, Mom quickly added. Your grandfather sent them when he moved into an assisted living facility. They've been in storage for years. Dad dug inside his briefcase and took out a business envelope. Here's the key to the storage unit we leased downtown. Everything of hers is present. Take it when you are ready. I took the envelope, my fingers quivering slightly. Thank you. Outside the cafe, we exchanged uncomfortable half-hugs and promised to stay in touch. I watched them stroll toward the parking garage, their shoulders less tense than when they first came. Instead of going back to the office, I called Ethan. How did it go? He inquired instantly. Better than I had imagined. Different from what I expected. As I headed toward our apartment, I summed up our chat. They uncovered more of Grandma May's journals. Ones I've never seen before. Wow. Ethan understood what I meant. Are you going to look at them today? No, not yet. I need to process the meeting first. I paused at a crossing, watching folks pass by. They seemed genuinely regretful, Ethan, and interested in Zenita in a way they never were in my ideas before. People can change, he remarked quietly. Especially when forced to face the consequences of their choices. That's it. I'm not sure if they changed, or I did. Maybe both. The crossing light changed, and I entered the roadway. 2 years ago, their acceptance would have meant the world. Now, it's simply nice. Unexpected but not necessary. Because you've proven your worth to yourself, Ethan answered. Wasn't that always part of the journey? Not convincing them, but convincing yourself. I grinned, a warm glow pouring through me from his understanding. When did you become so wise? I married an incredible woman who teaches me something new every day. That evening, Ethan and I sat on our balcony, drinking a bottle of wine and watching the city lights appear as twilight fell. I detailed every aspect of the lunch encounter, examining their words, body language, and things left unsaid. Do you think you'll ever be fully reconciled with them? Ethan asked. I thought about the question thoroughly. I do not know. I am not sure what entirely reconciled might look like right now. We cannot erase the past. No, but you can create a different future. Maybe a careful one, with boundaries. I swirled the wine in my glass, watching it reflect the light. The craziest aspect is understanding I don't need their approval anymore. I did not put up the billboard that attracted their notice. I did not create Zenita to prove them incorrect. I did it for myself. And that's why you succeeded, Ethan remarked, lifting his glass. To building a life on your terms. I clinked my glass with his. To the choices that led me here. Later following week I went to the storage unit alone. The box holding my grandmother's stuff lay in the midst of the otherwise vacant space. A medium-sized trunk with brass fittings, and her name written on the side in faded gold lettering. Inside, I discovered 14 diaries wrapped in fading leather, images I had never seen before, letters exchanged with practitioners all over the world, and cures passed down through generations. The finding felt like reclaiming a lost piece of me. One of the images I'd never seen before showed my grandma proudly standing outside a little clinic in Fogan Province, clad in a white coat and with a stethoscope around her neck. The back included an inscription in precise Mandarin characters, which I carefully interpreted using my rusty language abilities. Mei Lin, an integrative medicine practitioner since 1965. My parents constantly talked about integrative medicine, not simply traditional Chinese medicine. She'd been using the identical method I'm currently basing my business on for decades, before Western healthcare recognized its benefits. Another shot showed her with a group of Western physicians, all smiling as they stood in front of a sign that said, East-West Medical Exchange Program. I spent hours in that storage unit, surrounded by my grandmother's history, putting together a tale that my parents had either never heard or had purposefully minimized. Mei Lin wasn't only a traditional healer who stuck to archaic practices, as they had depicted her. She'd been a pioneer in integrative medicine, regarded enough to engage in foreign exchange programs, and trained in both Eastern and Western methods. Among her documents, I discovered communication with American medical schools, letters from research institutes looking for her expertise, and even a draft of a textbook chapter she had contributed to before moving. My grandmother, whom my parents had quietly disregarded as old-fashioned, had been an innovator, a link between healing traditions. Tears flowed down my cheeks as I realized what Mom had sacrificed by coming to America. She'd sacrificed professional reputation, academic connections, and meaningful employment to provide her children, including my father, with opportunities that she thought they couldn't have in China at the time. Had my father ever known who his mother really was? Had he grasped the breadth of her expertise, the reputation she'd earned in her field? Or had he, like so many other children of immigrants, simply seen the parts of her that didn't fit into American life? In the oldest diary, written partly in Mandarin and partly in meticulous English, I discovered a sentence that felt destined for me, despite being written decades before my birth. The path to recovery is seldom straight. It winds through valleys of uncertainty, across mountains of resistance, and across rivers of dread. But with each stride, the healer gains strength. The genuine healing lies in the trip itself, in learning to trust what others cannot see. I stroked my fingers over my grandmother's calligraphy, feeling a bond that transcended time and familial divisions. Her insight helped me when my parents couldn't. Her confidence in holistic care impacted my vision, even when others denied it. I carefully packed my tote bag with the most immediately relevant materials, journals, pictures and letters documenting her professional triumphs. The remainder would need to be carefully archived, but these items would accompany me home tonight. Ethan was waiting when I arrived, having cooked supper but not wanting to disrupt my discovery process with phone calls or texting. His eyes widened as I put the images out on our dining table. She was amazing, Ethan. Not only a conventional healer, as my parents constantly said, she practiced integrative medicine before it was even a recognized discipline here. My voice quivered with passion. She was exactly what they've criticized me for trying to become. He perused the images, letters and diary entries I had translated for him. Does this affect everything for Zenita? I nodded, my thoughts racing with possibilities. We're not simply expanding on a notion, we're carrying on a heritage. These papers contain techniques she created, combinations she tried, and approaches she refined over the years. That night I was unable to sleep. I stayed on our balcony till dawn, going through my grandmother's writings by the light of a little lamp, taking notes, and occasionally exclaiming at insights that exactly matched current study findings. Connections she'd drawn 50 years before modern studies proved them. The next week, I held an emergency meeting for our product development team. We need to refocus our formulations, I said, distributing printouts of crucial journal articles across the meeting table. These were my grandmother's original procedures. They are the foundation on which everything else should be built. By the end of the morning, we had laid out a new product strategy. Our director of research and development, Dr. Asha Patel, a Harvard-trained physician who had grown disillusioned with the limitations of conventional medicine, almost vibrated with enthusiasm. These combinations make perfect sense from both biochemical and traditional perspectives, she remarked, looking over May's notes. Your grandmother was decades ahead of her time. The modified items were released 2 months later. Customer reaction was instant and overwhelmingly good. Users claimed more pronounced benefits, greater results, and less adverse effects. Our industry-leading retention rate increased even more. The next month, our subscription count surpassed 180,000. We introduced our adaptogenic mixes, extended our telemedicine services, and began preparing for worldwide delivery. 3 additional billboards emerged in significant areas, and Zanita signed agreements with 2 hospital systems interested in complementary treatment options. I met my folks for coffee, as promised. The talk flowed more smoothly than over lunch, although it was careful to avoid more serious emotional issues. They inquired about current developments involving Zanita. I inquired about their life, friendships, and garden. We did not mention Lily. As we were leaving, Mom handed me a tiny surprise wrapped in wrapping paper. What is this? I inquired, hesitant to take it. It's the bracelet your grandmother gave me when I married your father, she told me. I thought you might like to have it. For the connection to her. I opened it carefully. A beautiful jade bracelet with silver inlay, simple and lovely. She would have been so proud of you, Mom said quietly. She always said you had her spirit. I slid the bracelet onto my wrist, startled by its flawless fit. Thank you. Will you consider meeting Lily? Dad inquired as we approached the door. She's constantly asking about you. She says she misses her sister. The question elicited complex feelings. Lily had been educated to expect preference, but she had not initiated the dynamic between us. We had both been molded by our parents' decisions. Not yet, I responded, but maybe someday. Walking back to the office, I thought about the weird trip that had taken me here. My genuine life began with the wedding that my family did not attend. The anguish of their absence had driven me towards independence. I might not have claimed differently. The billboard they had seen by accident was more than simply a marketing campaign. It was a visual representation of everything I had accomplished during their absence. Their surprise at seeing my accomplishment shown so openly seemed appropriate. A reversal of our previous relationship, in which I was usually the one looking up to them, seeking recognition. I felt the jade bracelet on my wrist, remembering my grandmother's writings and her belief in circle healing. Perhaps this was its own form of medicine, the patient, meticulous rebuilding of a fundamentally damaged relationship, this time with new terms and bounds. That evening, I made a notation in my strategy plan for Zanita's next stage of growth. Expand the community outreach program to incorporate family wellness programs. Investigate intergenerational ways to repairing family structures. Ethan spotted it later, while he was studying the manuscript. New direction? He asked. Not exactly, I said, recalling my parents, Lily, and the intricate tapestry of pain and hope that shaped our past. Just combining all aspects of the journey. Isn't that what holistic actually means? Nothing is wasted, everything is transformed. He grasped my hand. From rejected wedding invitation to industry disruptor. Quite a transformation. The best revenge isn't cutting people off, I said, fully comprehending what I was saying as I spoke. It's becoming so thoroughly you that they're forced to realize what they've missed. Not to injure them, but to finally be noticed. The next week, we verified the placements for 3 more billboards. One would stand in my parents' neighborhood, not as a message or a memory, but because the demographics were appropriate for our intended audience. This time they wouldn't be surprised to see my face over the roadway.